Let me tell you something right at the start. In this business of trading, the thing that ruins most men is not the market. The market has no interest in your destruction. The market doesn't even know you exist. The market is there, ticking away, giving you signals every minute, every day. What ruins men is their inability to separate the real signals from the noise. They look at the same tape I look at, but they don't see what I see. They hear the same chatter, but they don't listen to the right thing. And I'll tell you, if you can't focus on the real signals, you'll never last long enough to make the kind of money that makes trading worth your time. Now, what do I mean by real signals? I don't mean tips from your broker. I don't mean headlines in the morning papers. And I certainly don't mean the noise you hear on the exchange floor or the stories being whispered in the back offices. Those are distractions, and if you let yourself be guided by them, you're done before you even start. The real signals come from the action of the market itself, price and volume, supply and demand, the actual movement of stocks, not the chatter around them. Do you see the difference? You'd be amazed how many traders spend all day chasing shadows. They think they're following signals, but in reality, they're chasing their own emotions dressed up as logic. A stock twitches, they think it's a sign. A rumor spreads, they think it's an opportunity. But the actual tape, tells a different story, and the tape doesn't lie. Have you ever watched a stock and felt certain it was going up, only to see it sink lower while you sat there, stunned? That's because you weren't following the signal, you were following your own hopes. Hope is the deadliest disease in trading. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, hope has no business in the market. You don't hope a stock goes up. You don't pray it comes back after it falls. You don't bargain with your own money on the table. You read the signal, you act, and if the signal proves false, you get out. No second chances, no stories to soothe your ego. The tape speaks, you listen. Simple as that. But here's the catch, simple doesn't mean easy. Most men can't do it. Most men are too tied up with their emotions, too concerned with being right, too eager to grab at every little movement, thinking it's the big one, and the market punishes them. It punishes them with 1,000 small cuts until they bleed themselves dry. Tell me, do you want to be one of those men, or do you want to be the man who waits patiently, calmly, until the signal is clear? Patience is everything. Patience to wait, patience to do nothing when nothing is to be done. Most fortunes are lost not because men acted too little, but because they acted too much. They couldn't stand the stillness. They couldn't bear to see the tape roll by without their name on it. They wanted action, so they forced trades out of thin air. The market doesn't reward forced trades. The market rewards discipline. Are you willing to sit tight when the signal isn't clear? That's the real test of a trader. Now let me explain something about real signals. They don't shout at you. They don't come with bells ringing and lights flashing. Real signals whisper. They show themselves in the steady movement of price, in the quiet persistence of volume, in the way a stock behaves after a rally or a decline. It's not about catching a sudden spike or guessing the news before the papers print it. It's about reading the behavior of the market the way a doctor reads a pulse. Slow, steady, careful observation. Can you develop that kind of eye? A stock that moves up on light volume and fades quickly, that's not a real signal. A stock that pushes through resistance with heavy buying and refuses to drop back, that's a signal. The difference is in the behavior, not in the story you attach to it. And when you learn to see that difference, you'll wonder how you ever missed it. But most never learn. They're too busy listening to others. Let me warn you, the worst signals you'll ever follow are the ones that come from somebody else's mouth. A tip, a rumor, a confident whisper in your ear. The man who trades on tips is the man who dies broke. I learned that lesson early, and it saved me from ruin more times than I can count. Do you think the big operators, the real money men, are going to whisper the truth in your ear? No. They want you chasing the shadows while they take the real move. Do you want to be their tool, or do you want to be their rival? When I was a boy, I watched the tape in bucket shops day after day. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't listening to stories. I was watching. I was noticing how prices moved before they made their big run. I saw the little tells, the repeated patterns, the way certain stocks acted when the demand was real. That's how I learned to separate the real signals from the noise. It wasn't luck, and it wasn't a system I bought in a book. It was observation, patience, and discipline. Have you put in that kind of work yourself, or are you still hoping for a shortcut? A real signal doesn't need your opinion. It doesn't care what you think. It doesn't care what anybody thinks. The tape doesn't care if you're bullish or bearish, hopeful or scared. The signal is there, waiting to be recognized, and if you miss it, the market won't give you sympathy. That's the beauty of it. The market is the most honest teacher you'll ever meet. It punishes weakness, rewards strength, and gives no favors. Do you have the strength to face that kind of honesty every day? And let's not forget the money side of it. Trading isn't just about finding the signal. It's about managing your stake when you act on it. You can spot the clearest signal in the world, but if you put too much money on the line, or hold on too long, or refuse to cut your loss, you'll still go under. The signal tells you when to get in, but your discipline tells you when to get out. Most men get one part right and the other part wrong. They either enter too eagerly and hold too loosely, or they hesitate to enter and then cling desperately when it turns against them. Which mistake are you making more often? Wealth in this business doesn't come from one lucky strike. It doesn't come from hitting the jackpot once in your life. Wealth comes from consistency, spotting the real signals, acting on them with precision, cutting your losses short, and letting your winners run. Over and over, month after month, year after year. That's how fortunes are built. Do you have the stomach for that kind of grind, or are you just chasing excitement? The truth is, most men want excitement more than they want wealth. They want the thrill of being in the game, of having action on the line. They confuse motion with progress. But the successful trader, the man who builds wealth that lasts, he wants results, not thrills. He waits for the real signals. He ignores the noise, and he acts when the odds are in his favor. And when he acts boldly, without hesitation. That's the difference. Are you in this for the thrill, or are you in this for the result? When I look back on my career, the biggest money I ever made wasn't from being clever. It wasn't from guessing better than the next man. It was from sitting tight when the signal was right. Everybody wants to be clever. Everybody wants to outguss the market. But the market doesn't reward cleverness, it rewards alignment. If you're aligned with the real movement, you'll win. If you're fighting it, you'll lose. Simple as that. So the real question is, can you strip away all the noise, all the chatter, all your own emotions, and focus only on the real signals? Can you train your mind to wait, to observe, to see the tape for what it is instead of what you wish it to be? Because if you can, then you have a chance. Not a guarantee. There are no guarantees in this game, but a chance, and that chance is worth more than any tip, any rumor, any shortcut you could ever find. Hope is not a signal, it's a trap. I want you to really understand that, because it's the undoing of more traders than anything else I've ever seen. Men step into the market thinking they're armed with knowledge, with courage, with skill. But in reality, they're holding nothing more than hope in their hands. And the market doesn't care one whit about your hopes. The market moves because of supply and demand, because of forces much larger than you or me, and no amount of hoping is ever going to make it change its direction. Have you ever sat there, staring at a stock going against you, and whispered to yourself, just come back, just a little more, just one more uptick so I can get out? That's hope talking, and that's why men lose. The most dangerous moment for a trader isn't when he's wrong and knows it. It's when he's wrong and refuses to admit it. That refusal almost always disguises itself as hope. He thinks he's being patient, he thinks he's giving the stock room to breathe, but he's really just hoping it will reverse course to bail him out. I've been there. I've felt it in my own gut. That twisting feeling that makes you hang on to a bad position because you can't stand the thought of being wrong. Do you think the market cares if you're wrong? The market doesn't even know your name. It will grind you into the dust while you're busy hoping for a miracle. When I was younger, I learned that the quickest way to lose your stake is to hope instead of act. The tape tells you something and you don't listen. You wait, you delay, you invent excuses for why it's not what it seems. You think it'll turn around, or the market is just shaking out the weak hands. But the truth is staring you in the face. The signal is against you. If you won't respect it, you'll pay for it. Isn't it strange how a man can look at the same price action as everyone else, but somehow convince himself that he's right and the market is wrong? You see, hope is comfortable. It feels good. It keeps you from having to make the hard choice, from taking the loss, from admitting your mistake. But the market isn't about comfort. It's about truth. And the truth shows itself in the movement of prices, not in your feelings about them. The man who trades on hope is not trading at all, he's gambling. And worse than that, he's gambling without even knowing he's gambling. Do you know how many times I've seen men wipe out, not because they couldn't find a winner, but because they refused to let go of a loser? Let me tell you something, no stock, no trade, no single position is worth your entire fortune. And yet men cling to their losers as if their very lives depend on them. They won't cut a loss because they're hoping for a rebound, and that hope grows fatter every time the stock sinks lower. It's madness. A real trader knows he can always re-enter if the signal turns back in his favor. He doesn't need to sit there begging the market to rescue him. But most men don't think that way. They think cutting a loss is permanent, final, humiliating. They'd rather keep hoping. And that's why they go broke. Have you ever held a stock so long you stopped even checking the tape because it hurt too much to look? That's the face of hope when it rots. Now don't mistake me, I'm not saying patience has no place in trading. Patience is essential when you're aligned with a real signal. But patience and hope are two different things. Patience is disciplined. It's waiting because the tape still agrees with your position. Hope is blind. It's waiting because you can't stand to do anything else. Can you tell the difference in yourself? Because if you can't, the market will teach you the hard way. One of the greatest edges a trader has is the ability to be wrong quickly. If you buy a stock and it doesn't act right, if the movement contradicts your reason for buying, you don't sit there hoping it will change. You sell it. Immediately. You can always buy it back later if it shows the right action. That's not weakness. That's strength. The weak man clings. The strong man cuts. It's the clingers who feed the market their fortunes. And all the while, they tell themselves they're being smart, when really they're just hoping. Isn't it curious how men fool themselves so easily when money is on the line? You have to understand that hope is a form of denial. It keeps you from facing reality. And in the market, reality is the only thing that matters. A stock is either going up or going down. It's either strong or weak. It doesn't matter what you hoped it would do, what you told yourself it should do, or what story you heard from the fellow at the club. The tape is telling you the truth right now in real time. If you ignore it, that's not courage, it's suicide. I remember countless times when the crowd around me was buzzing with excitement over a stock. Everyone was sure it was going to the moon. The stories were grand, the tips were hot, and the hope was thick in the air. But I looked at the tape, and it told me something else. The buying was thin, the support was weak, the stock was heavy. So I stayed out, or I sold short, and sure enough, it fell. Meanwhile, the hopeful crowd clung to it all the way down, cursing the market, cursing their luck, but never blaming their own hope. Why do you think that is? Because hope makes men blind. If you want to last in this business, you have to train yourself to cut out hope like a surgeon cuts out a tumor. You have to recognize it the moment it creeps into your thinking and stop it cold. When you catch yourself saying, maybe it'll bounce, or it can't go much lower, that's the sound of hope. That's the alarm bell telling you you're no longer trading your wishing, and wishes don't make money. I'll tell you the truth that most traders never want to hear the market owes you nothing. Not one penny. If you put money into a trade and it goes against you, the market isn't going to make it fair by bringing it back just for you. It's not personal. It's business. Your only job is to protect your capital by acting on signals, not emotions. Hope is an emotion, a costly one. Do you really want to hand your money over just because you couldn't control your own feelings? The successful trader isn't smarter than everyone else. He's just more disciplined. He sees hope for what it is and refuses to let it dictate his actions. He doesn't marry his trades. He doesn't cling to losers. He doesn't invent excuses to hold on. He takes his small losses quickly because he knows they're the cost of staying in the game. The hopeful man refuses to take those small losses, and in doing so, he guarantees himself one big loss that wipes him out. Which kind of man do you want to be? The market will test you every day. It will tempt you to hope instead of act. It will lure you into holding when you should sell, into buying when you should wait, into staying when you should leave. And every time you give in to that temptation, you're making a donation to the man who had the discipline you lacked. The market transfers money from the hopeful to the disciplined. That's the law of this business. So you must learn to distrust hope. Treat it like poison. When you feel it creeping in, remind yourself this is not a signal, this is not information, this is not the market speaking. This is me trying to protect my pride, trying to escape discomfort. And pride has no place in trading. Only truth does. The truth of the tape, the truth of the signal. Everything else is noise. Discipline in cutting losses is part of reading the signal. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, because it's the one lesson most traders hear 100 times, but never really learn. The market is a great teacher, but it charges a high tuition for those who refuse to listen. You can study charts, you can watch the tape, you can learn to recognize when a stock is acting strong or weak, but all that knowledge won't save you if you don't have the discipline to act when the signal turns against you. What good is spotting the truth if you ignore it when it doesn't suit your wishes? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, it'll turn around, while the tape is clearly telling you otherwise? That's the moment discipline makes the difference between survival and ruin. Cutting losses is not a matter of courage, it's a matter of routine. The disciplined trader doesn't wait until fear drives him out of a position. He doesn't hope, he doesn't pray, he doesn't invent excuses. He acts. The moment a trade proves itself wrong, he gets out and he doesn't hesitate. The weak man tells himself he'll give it just a little more time, a little more room. The disciplined man knows that every second he spends hoping is another second his capital is in danger. Which kind of man are you when the trade goes against you? The great mistake traders make is thinking they can control the market by sheer willpower. They think, if they just hold long enough, the stock will reward them for their loyalty. But the market doesn't reward loyalty, it rewards alignment. If you're aligned with the signal, you'll win. If you're not, you'll lose. Simple as that. Discipline means accepting that truth, however uncomfortable it may be. It means selling when you'd rather hold, admitting you're wrong when you'd rather be right, and taking a small cut so you don't bleed to death later. Do you find it hard to admit when you're wrong? Most men do. That's why most men fail in this business. A small loss is a lesson, a necessary expense, part of the game. A big loss is negligence. And negligence is nothing more than a lack of discipline. The difference between the two is not the market's fault, it's yours. The tape gave you a warning, the signal turned against you, and you ignored it. That's not bad luck. That's your weakness being punished. How many times has that happened to you? Be honest with yourself, because if you can't admit it, you'll keep repeating it. There's an old saying, cut your losses short and let your profits run. Everyone knows it, everyone repeats it, but very few live by it. Why? Because it requires discipline. It requires going against the natural human instincts of hope and fear. A man will cut a profit quickly because he fears losing what he's gained, and he'll hold a loss forever because he hopes it will turn around. The disciplined trader reverses that instinct. He cuts his losses without hesitation, and he lets his profits work until the signal changes. That reversal is the dividing line between amateurs and professionals. Have you crossed that line yet? I've seen men with perfect chart reading skills, men who could spot accumulation and distribution like hawks, go broke because they lacked the discipline to act on what they saw. They could identify the signal but not obey it. Knowledge without discipline is as dangerous as ignorance. What use is reading the tape if you can't follow where it leads? It's like knowing the road is washed out ahead and driving straight into the river anyway. Do you really think you'll be the one exception who makes it through? You have to understand that cutting a loss is not failure. It's strength. It's survival. The man who can't take a small loss will eventually take the big one that wipes him out. The market is merciless to the stubborn. It doesn't matter how much money you made last year, last month, or yesterday. One undisciplined position can undo it all. I've seen it happen to others, and I've lived through it myself. That's why I'm telling you now, discipline in cutting losses is not optional. It's the very backbone of trading. Think of your capital as your army. Every trade is a battle. If you waste soldiers on a hopeless fight, you won't have the strength to fight the real war. Discipline means retreating when the battle turns against you, saving your men for the right moment. Without discipline, you'll squander them all on foolish hopes. And once your capital is gone, you're out of the game. Do you want to be a general who wins the war, or a fool who loses his whole army in the first fight? Many traders confuse stubbornness with strength. They think holding a losing position shows courage. It doesn't. It shows weakness. Because it means you're controlled by pride instead of logic. Real strength is admitting the loss quickly, taking it clean, and moving on to the next opportunity. Pride is expensive in this business. Pride and discipline don't mix. Which one controls you when the heat is on? Discipline isn't just about cutting losses once in a while. It's about making it a habit so ingrained that you don't even question it. The moment your stop is hit, you sell. No debate, no second guessing, no bargaining with yourself. The market has spoken and you obey. That's not surrender, that's strategy. Every soldier follows orders if he wants to win. The trader must do the same. The beauty of discipline is that it protects you from yourself. Your emotions will betray you every time. Fear, hope, greed, pride, those are the enemies. Discipline is the weapon that keeps them in check. Without it, you're at their mercy, and they will ruin you. But with it, you can face the market with clarity. You'll see the signal for what it is, not for what you wish it to be. You'll act instead of hesitating, and that difference, small as it seems, is what separates the winners from the losers. Remember, this: losses are inevitable, but disasters are optional. The disciplined trader accepts the former to avoid the latter. The undisciplined trader avoids the small pain of cutting a loss and suffers the fatal pain of ruin. It's a choice you make every time you trade. Which pain do you prefer, the small sting now or the crushing blow later? The market will test your discipline daily. It will lure you into holding when you should sell, into waiting when you should act, into telling yourself stories to justify your weakness. And every time you fail that test, you'll pay. Every time you pass it, you'll grow stronger. Discipline isn't something you're born with, it's something you build, trade by trade, decision by decision. How much discipline have you built into yourself? Without discipline in cutting losses, all the other skills mean nothing. Chart reading, market timing, stock selection, they're worthless if you don't have the guts to sell when you're wrong. The best analysis in the world won't save you if you refuse to act on it. That's why I say discipline isn't part of trading, it is trading. Everything else is secondary. Tips and rumors blind you from the tape's truth. That's something every trader needs to etch into his mind before he dares to put $1 into the market. There's no quicker way to empty your account than to trade on what somebody else whispers into your ear. You might think you've got inside knowledge, a secret advantage, some special word that the crowd hasn't heard yet. But in reality, you've got nothing more than a distraction that keeps your eyes off the only thing that matters, the market itself. Have you ever taken a tip, convinced it was golden, only to watch the stock sink while you sat there waiting for the story to come true? That's how tips work. They seduce you with false certainty and rob you of discipline. When I started out, I learned that the tape is the only thing worth following. The tape doesn't lie. It doesn't care what some operator says at the club, or what the newspapers print in bold headlines, or what your broker insists is a sure thing. The tape records the truth in every price change, every tick, every shift in volume. That's the signal. Everything else is noise. And yet, men fall for tips every day, thinking they've stumbled on the secret shortcut to fortune. Do you know why they fall for it? Because it's easier to believe a story than to do the hard work of studying the market. Tips are like opium to the lazy trader. They give him a sense of certainty, a warm feeling that he knows something others don't. But it's a false high, and sooner or later, he pays the price. Rumors work the same way. They spread through the market like fire, sparking excitement, fear, and greed. Men rush in, not because the tape tells them to, but because they don't want to miss out on what others are doing. And once again, the market punishes them. Tell me, have you ever bought a stock because everyone around you seemed so sure of it, only to regret it the moment you saw the price action? That's the blindness rumors bring. The operators, the big men, the insiders, they understand this weakness in human nature. They use tips and rumors the way a fisherman uses bait. They throw them out, watch the little fish chase after them, and then reel them in when the time is right. If you're following tips, you're not trading against the market, you're trading against men who are far more cunning and better capitalized than you are. Do you really think they're handing you the truth for free? If a man tells you something that sounds too good to be true in this business, it always is. Every time you take a tip, you surrender your independence. You stop thinking for yourself, you stop watching the tape with clear eyes, and you let another man's voice guide your money. That's not trading, that's servitude. And servitude has no place in the market. The disciplined trader trusts only what he can see with his own eyes in the price action. The tape is the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner. Why trade on hearsay when you can trade on truth? The real danger of tips and rumors is not just that they're often wrong, it's that they make you ignore the signals in front of you. A stock might be showing weakness, breaking support, sliding lower on heavy volume. But if you're clutching a tip that says it's going to double, you'll blind yourself to that weakness. You'll invent reasons to ignore the signal. You'll say, it's just a shakeout, or the insiders are trying to scare us out. That's how men turn small losses into disasters, by choosing rumor over reality. Haven't you seen traders defend a losing stock with elaborate stories when all they needed to do was admit the tape was against them? Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Nobody hands you money in this game. Nobody whispers the truth in your ear without wanting something in return. If you think you've been given a gift, it's probably a trap. The big men don't move on rumors, they move on signals. They read the tape, they see the accumulation, they feel the pressure building. The little men chase the stories, always one step behind, always holding the bag. Which side of that equation do you want to be on? Rumors appeal to greed. Tips appeal to laziness. Together, they destroy discipline. They make a man think he can shortcut the hard work of observation, the long hours of waiting, the discipline of patience. But there are no shortcuts in trading. The only way to win is to align yourself with the truth of the market. And the truth is written in price and volume, not in whispers and headlines. Do you want to build your fortune on foundations of smoke, or on solid ground? I've seen fortunes made and lost in this business. And I can tell you, the men who made them weren't following tips. They weren't hanging around in brokerage houses waiting for gossip. They were watching the tape, studying the patterns, acting on signals. The losers were the ones chasing every story, buying on hope, selling on fear, always reacting, never thinking. The market is a weighing machine. It doesn't care about stories, only facts. And the fact is, tips and rumors are poison to a trader's judgment. The truth is, tips rob you twice. First, they take your money when the trade goes wrong. Second, they take your clarity, because you no longer trust yourself, you trust the tipster. You've handed over your judgment, your independence, your edge. And once you've done that, you're not really in the market at all. You're just a pawn in someone else's game. How long do you think a pawn lasts? A real trader doesn't need tips. He doesn't crave them, doesn't listen for them, doesn't care what the crowd is whispering. He looks at the tape and acts accordingly. If the tape confirms strength, he buys. If it shows weakness, he sells or stays out. That's all. Simple, clean, disciplined. Every tip is a temptation to stray from that simplicity. Every rumor is a distraction that clouds your vision. If you want to see clearly, you have to cut them out completely. And remember, the market has a cruel sense of humor. The rare times when a tip does work, it conditions you to trust the next one. That's the real trap. You think you've stumbled onto a reliable source, you start leaning on it, and then bang, it fails when you've bet big. The market doesn't ruin you with small errors. It ruins you with the big one that you walked into because you were blind with confidence. Do you see how dangerous that is? If you want to test yourself as a trader, stop listening to anyone else. Block out the chatter, the gossip, the headlines, the whispers. Focus only on the tape. Watch the price, watch the volume, watch the way the stock behaves.